Well, you can hear a lot more about the Big Three and the Boston Celtics on GMC NBA Countdown Sunday on ABC. Well, it's time for some NBA bracketology. Here are the East brackets as they stand today. Cleveland would take on Detroit, 1-8. Atlanta against Miami. Orlando would take on Philadelphia. And Boston would take on Chicago. All right, guys, let's play out the rest of the regular season in the Eastern Conference. By virtue of the fact that Cleveland and Atlanta both have their magic number at 1, I'm going to give them the 1 and 4 slots automatically. Okay, that means that number 2 is still up for grabs between Orlando and the Boston Celtics. Let's take a look at the remaining schedules for those respective teams. Orlando with a much more favorable Final 4 games than Boston. The Celtics have 3 playoff teams down the stretch, and that includes the Cavs in Cleveland. The Magic don't play any teams who are in the postseason right now. Jamal, how do you see this shaking down for the number 2 spot in the East?
Well, you got that one right.
Thank you.
Cavs,
I'm 100%.
Number 1, you got that one right. But number 2, I'm going to go with the Celtics because they're the reigning champions. We have to give them their respect. They're great defensively. Paul Pierce playing outstanding basketball as well as Rajon Rondo. So we're going to give them the number 2, and they're going to go 3-1 down the stretch.
Without KG, except for the last couple of games?
Yeah, 3-1. They have that much experience. And, of course, we have to go with the Orlando Magic at the number 3 spot. And that's an easy one. They're playing sub-500 teams. They're going to go in 4-0 down the stretch. You have Dwight Howard, 3-point shooting. So they're a beast in the East.
You agree with that, Jalen?
I second that motion for the most part. I just think the Celtics will probably go 2-2, and the Orlando Magic will probably go 3-1. But even at that, they'll still have the number 2 spot.
Important to note that the Celtics have the tiebreaker against Orlando. Okay, we gave number 4 to the Hawks. That means 5 and 6 still up for grabs between the Heat and the 76ers. Look at Philly's remaining schedule. Brutal. 3 of their final 4 against the Celtics and the Cavs. The Heat don't have an easy path either, but Miami owns the tiebreaker against the 76ers. Jalen, how do you see this playing out for 5 and 6?
And the Heat do have Dwayne Wade, and he's pretty good. So I'm going to put the Miami Heat at number 5 because I think he won't let them lose, and therefore that makes the Sixers, without Thaddeus Young, that's going to be a big loss the last couple of games. They will have to fall to number 6.
What about Miami without Udonis Haslem down the stretch?
I just think the last couple of games, Dwayne Wade will find a way to will his team to this spot.
Jamal, you agree with that?
I agree with that. You got to remember, the Heat only won 15 games last year, so this is the definite improvement. The Sixers, they limped into the playoffs last year, going 1-5 down the stretch. They're doing the same this year, so that's the correct spot for them at number 6.
Tony DeLeo doing a great job with Philadelphia. Meanwhile, still up for grabs, 7 and 8, albeit at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. The Bulls have 3 games left, and one of them is at Detroit. Right now, Chicago owns the tiebreaker with the Pistons. The Pistons have been to the conference finals 6 consecutive years, Jamal, but how do you see 7 and 8 playing out?
Well, we're not looking at the Pistons for that 7th spot because the Bulls have really stepped up after the trade of John Salmons and also Brad Miller. So I like the Bulls. They've been dominant at home in the second half of the season. I like their young talent, ability to score, and they put pressure on the defense, getting an up-tempo game. And I'm going to have to go with the most inconsistent team in the NBA. But they have a lot of experience with Rip Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, and Rasheed Wallace. So that'll be a great 1-8 matchup. Cavaliers-Pistons. Pistons number 8.
You agree with that, Jalen Rose?
It looks real good on paper, but I might make a little bit of change here and there.
Okay.
And my change probably is going to be, I think both teams will only lose 1 game, except the Bulls only have 3, so that means they'll go 2-1, and Detroit will go 3-1. So therefore, Detroit gets the tiebreaker. Chicago, unfortunately, gets King James in the first round, and the Detroit Pistons, in a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Finals, play the Boston Celtics.
Do you think his Detroit bias is playing out in this, Jamal?
Big time.
Well, I'm going to have to break the push here because you guys went different ways on this. I'm going to say that because of the fact that Chicago seems to be playing a little bit better right now than the Pistons. The Pistons, Rasheed Wallace still hurting a little bit coming off of that leg injury. I'll put them at the 8th spot.
And no Allen Iverson as well. So they have a young point guard in Rodney Stuckey. So I still think they stay at that 8th spot. Sorry about that, Jalen.
No Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen for the Bulls, gentlemen.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen in Detroit. Well, you guys, I know, have done your homework for the Western Conference. When we come back later in Key NBA Shoot-Around, we'll fill out the Western Conference side of the board and see how the Wild Wild West will play out the rest of the way.